All right, Sport and Spinal Weekly. Here we are, another week. And Dr. Erickson's with us this week. You've been busy this summer.
Yeah, the last couple of weeks I've had a couple conflicts with recording. So yeah, it's good to be back.
Sure. Have you had a good summer so far?
Oh, it's been a great summer. It's been awesome weather, and finally getting maybe just a touch of rain.
Yeah,
which is nice.
Yeah,
cools off a little bit, so fall's in the air.
Dragon boats for you last week?
Yeah, I didn't do the dragon boat. I was out of town, but man, I heard it was a great event.
Yeah, it was. Another one of those great dragon boats on the water. A few sprinkles, but other than that, it was a lot of fun. I was wondering maybe if you've seen extra clients in this week.
Well, there's been a few in there with some sprains and strains. There's no doubt about that.
Paddling pain.
Yeah, it's funny, people aren't outside of a few teams in that deal. There's not many people who do that regularly. So,
well, and I always think about that because you say we twist and turn and
bend,
and we do it. That's when we throw our back out.
Yeah.
Have you paddled in the dragon?
Yeah, I have.
That's probably not good for your back.
That's what you do. So. Job security.
I was just wondering. What are we going to talk about this week?
Well, people probably been watching the Olympics a little bit.
Yeah.
And I tell you, there's so many Olympic athletes that utilize chiropractic, and so we'll touch on that a little bit and talk about maybe why maybe some of them who do utilize chiropractic and maybe why they do.
And sport physicals.
And sport physicals, I know we touched on that maybe a few weeks ago, but yeah, remind everybody of that as well. And
camps are now like 1 a days or 2 a days are starting in just a couple weeks, right?
Yeah, they're coming on here. I think I heard some of the schools next week are starting, some tennis and whatever, the fall sports. But so they need to be done, and it's good to get them done at a place where folks kind of know what they're looking for.
Hence the name, Sport and Spinal Rehab, chiropractic sport and spinal rehab. We'll be back and talk about today's show when we return. This is Sport and Spinal Weekly on 92.1 The River. Sport and Spinal Weekly, we are back, and of course, all the information that you hear on the shows are then podcasts on the website.
Correct. They can find anyone can find that at sportsandspinalrehab.com.
And you can always email the show, sportandspinalweekly at paulbunyan.net. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, or a question you'd like to ask Dr. Erickson or any of the doctors or any from the staff there at the clinic. There's so many departments, so many people, they can cover it for you. We're talking the Olympics, yeah. I mean, it's another great Olympics. I know we only do it every couple of years. It was 4 years ago, the Summer Games. And they both are special in their special ways. But you are talking the world's premier athletes. It doesn't get any better than Olympic athletes, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch been watching the Olympics, I love the stories they tell about, the athletes that didn't make it in 08, and now they've been training every day, so they have another shot at it, and so they really are the world's premier athletes, and from obviously all reaches of the world. When you're
in the shape that they're in, some of us think, well, how could they get out alive? I mean, aren't they specimens of the body?
Well, most of them will utilize chiropractic. I mean, they're going to utilize it for different reasons than
they don't have a bad back. They want their stuff moving right.
Exactly. They're going to do it to optimize their performance in many cases. There are some of the athletes out there that are going to get chiropractic adjustments or treatment to help them get through an event. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've got a ailing back, or a knee, or shoulder, or neck, or whatever that part may be, and the chiropractic care helps them, kind of get through that because they've trained for this long. They're going to work through the pain. Mm-hmm. That's one type of a scenario. The other type of scenario, which is I think more common, is the scenario where they're in absolutely no pain, and they're not having chiropractic care for pain relief or to get through it. They're utilizing chiropractic care to enhance their performance. What can I do to be better than the next person? And that little bit of an adjustment, or making sure the body's moving and functioning properly. Making sure your nerves, which is the cornerstone of chiropractic, really is making sure your muscles and joints and primarily nerves are working at 100%. And if everything's working together, it stands to reason that you're going to perform better.
What about gymnasts? Because when you think about it, aren't they just really just being very mean to their back. I mean, very destructive. That's not normal for us to be out there doing somersaults and flipping around. And, and their goal is to write sticks on their feet. Well, that's got to go to your back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's gymnasts they really beat themselves up. There's no doubt about that. I mean, they're phenomenal athletes, and obviously require tons of flexibility and movement and motion, and their joints need to be moving and functioning properly
probably more out of any athlete.
More out of any. One premier athlete. Well, he's the fastest man in the world. If you go on, just pop on Google and type in Usain Bolt and chiropractic, and it'll come up as a nice little video of the chiropractor actually adjusting him there.
Oh, really? Right there.
Right at the Olympics. He's getting adjusted, before his races. So the fastest man in the world.
That's what he uses.
If that's what he uses, and he's not using it for pain relief, really. He's using it to enhance his performance, and I'm not saying that chiropractic is why he is the fastest man in the world, but it's part of his toolbox, if you will, of things that he does to prepare for an event and to prevent injury and enhance performance.
So let me ask you. So he's getting adjusted before he goes and runs, and what you guys are doing is making sure everything's in the right spot. In layman's terms, for us.
Yeah, really, making sure that the spine is in the right alignment. There's no restrictions in movement in the spine and the pelvis. Adjusting the spine will stimulate the nervous system, and when you stimulate the nervous system, your muscles will fire better, faster.
Okay.
And and actually, they've done some studies with Olympic weightlifters, where they'll have the lifter, they'll adjust him right before he lifts. He'll do a lift and he'll increase his lift by, I don't know the percentage offhand, but it's like 3% or something. Which when you're lifting a lot out of weight, that's the difference between winning and not winning. And so and it's not because it's not because they're in pain. It's to enhance their performance, to make sure all your nerves are firing at the right time. Because if you think about it, if you're gonna go through a motion, let's just say running, your brain tells your muscles what to do, right? It gets that signal through the nervous system, and so if your spine is out of alignment, or there's some restriction, or there's some impedance of nerve flow, if you will, it will slow down the reaction time of the muscles, and therefore you won't perform as well as you should.
Even though that person maybe felt like they were okay, felt like they could run, or whatever.
They probably won't have any pain, because pain is usually the last thing to show up with things. Things need to be really damaged before you feel pain.
So for some of us, or others, I won't put me in that category. But when they say I just didn't have it in me today, I guess it goes to a complete literal. Really didn't.
Exactly. Yeah.
So a simple adjustment. Well, I can see it because if you stimulate, then I don't know the technical part, but as you say, that it's kind of like putting a turbo boost on, kind of.
Yeah, it's just making sure your body's working at the optimal capacity. It really is, and it's not something that a lot of people probably ever think about, because when you think about chiropractic, you probably think about back pain or neck pain or headaches, and those are the things that we deal with 90% of the time, at least in our practice, I would say. There are chiropractors who specifically will travel. I know we've talked about the PGA and the golf tour and the professional football, and those guys are doing it for both those reasons. Number one, to enhance performance. Number two, to prevent injury and decrease pain. So it's I think it for a lot of people probably listening, they're thinking, well, geez, that's what I grasp to say that the chiropractic adjustment helps with performance. But if you think about it, it really makes sense.
Because you've said it more than once, when all of our we're moving fluidly like we're supposed to, we can take it to the max, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's funny because we do these things in our practice with everybody. We're doing the same types of adjustments. Hey, the other thing you probably noticed too is you notice the volleyball players have this goofy looking tape on them. Yeah. That's called kinesio tape. And that's one of the treatments that we do at our office too.
Oh.
And it's again that aids in actually in circulation, and we can help muscles kind of fire better, or we can help support the muscular structure with that kinesio tape. So
I see.
You take a look at that stuff and you'd say, well, geez, why are these folks wearing this?
What are you taping up your shoulder
Yeah,
for?
and then we'll come in our office and we'll pull out the same roll of kinesio tape and start taping people up. So it's kind of neat to see our practice practiced on a, kind of on a world stage.
Absolutely. And so many of us, we don't realize, we just see, individuals around those athletes, and sure enough, one of them's probably a chiropractor, right?
Yeah, and they've got a whole medical team. There's physical therapists there, and they got their, their medical doctor and nutritionist.
It'd be interesting to see how many chiropractors the U.S. Olympic teams have.
Yeah.
Probably a couple for every sport, huh?
Yeah, they've got, you've got to do, I've visited with some of the folks that actually travel. Of course, they've got to take time away from their practice, too.
Right.
They have to have that ability to go do that. So if I was to leave, to go travel with the Olympic team, I mean, you'd have to make a good commitment to do that,
Right. Plus I suppose, throughout the year.
Plus throughout the year. So it's there are specific chiropractors that do work the Olympic Games, and they do it because they love to work on athletes and that type of thing. But yeah, there's a bunch of guys out there to do it.
Now, from that all the way to even our local athletes, no matter the level, is it when they get into middle school they start having a physical?
Yeah, when they start high school, sponsored sports,
okay.
The Minnesota State High School League requires the physical. So, and again, we talked in the intro. That's the practice. I think next week is a lot of them start. So, and it's always a rush. It never fails. Like practice starts on Monday, and then Monday afternoon it's like, oh, gee, you've got a physical. So, I mean, give the office a call. We got 3 docs working. We can fit people in. We're not going to make anybody wait for an hour, and to have their physical done. Plus, like we mentioned, we really do take I'd say take pride in doing those physicals because we look at the structural components. We're not going to recommend that they have chiropractic care or anything like that, but we may point out some postural things or notice some things that maybe some docs who do it or some nurse practitioners who do it, maybe they won't notice that.
Sure. Well, and I know that as we grew up and had the physical, it seemed like a pretty quick routine thing, and I always wondered. Now, do you guys take a couple extra steps and look at a few things that perhaps, like you were saying, because you guys are in the sport side of things, that you look for things?
Well, sure, we look at not maybe other.
I'm not saying other doctors don't,
and they maybe do, but I know that what we look at is we do a good postural exam. We'll look at their look at the feet, see if they're pronated or if they have flat feet. So again, if we can catch something like that early, we might be able to say, hey, if you had a pair of orthotics or wore a certain type of shoe, you might prevent yourself from having shin splints if you're a cross-country runner.
Oh, okay.
Those types of things. So it's going to prevent them having to come in when they do have shin splints and say, now it's going to take a ton of treatment to get you feeling better. So it's kind of little things like that. Might be a postural thing where someone has terrible posture, so they're sitting rounded, shouldered, and prevent them from developing back pain in the future. So it's kind of the little things like that I think that we see it so often that it just pops out at us.
And for some of these parents, this will be their first time going through a physical sport, and they're going to get a physical. Well, how can you put parents at ease?
Well, it's just, and a lot of times the kids are really nervous, especially their first one. But it's so easy. I mean, and the parents are welcome to come in with us and whatever. So I mean, it's a really simple process. It doesn't take long. Probably takes 15, 20 minutes.
Do parents ask questions? I mean, maybe not so really much related to the physical, but like their child being in a particular sport. Do they?
Not too often, but that's something that I'd encourage.
Sure.
And it's funny, I see this in practice a lot, not just with athletes, but parents a lot of times don't pay a lot of attention to their kids with their health things or especially musculoskeletal things, because if I'm doing a history with someone, let's say a 14-year-old girl, I'll say, do you have headaches? And she'll say, well, yeah. And the parent they'll be over in the corner and they'll say, what?
You got headaches?
You've never told me you've had headaches. I say, well, how often do you get them? And she'll say, well, at least once or twice a week. And the parent has never heard this before, because you know what, kids don't like to complain about stuff. If you think about it,
Or sometimes we're saying, "Oh, just lay down for a minute, your headache will go away."
So little things like that, I think you can, as a doctor, and other doctors do this too. You can elicit different things out of kids that I think are helpful. Not just in the sports arena, but just in life in general.
Well, and it's a great thing that they require a physical before the sport, but it's just good to know. And I suppose maybe every once in a while, do you guys come across where a person's they can't play football? Or
the things that we'll find is we may find that someone has a hernia, or we may listen to the heart, and there might be what we may think is an abnormal heart sound, a murmur or something like that. So then, at that point, what we do from a chiropractic perspective is then we refer them on to their medical doctor and say, hey, you need to get this checked out. So it's simple things like that and when we catch them at the baseline, they can avoid certain things down the road, more serious things.
Sure. Well, and just the information a parent will get about their child. And, with you guys, the way you do it, maybe even a little more information that they weren't aware of. Or certainly to ask questions. But, yeah, the sports time is here. Sure enough, we'll be full of Friday night football and all the other sports throughout the week. And you guys are available for physicals.
We're available for physicals and anyone that needs to to have some work done on their body if they get injured, or if people want to prevent injury, or like we talked about, possibly enhance their performance.
Well, good with that. Dr. Erickson is with us today, Sport and Spinal Weekly. When we come back, we'll close out the show and give us today's tip on 92.1 The River. This is Sport and Spinal Weekly. Sport and Spinal Weekly, we are back, and we're going to close out the show today. Dr. Erickson is with us as we round off the last few weeks of summer. Enjoyed the outside. We were talking about the Olympics, so people will still be viewing that here for the next couple of days, right?
Yeah, well, they're getting excited now because now the big matches are coming. The gold medal stuff is going on, and it's pretty exciting stuff.
Reason to be glued to the TV. What do you got for us this week? That's a good tip.
Well, here's the tip. Everybody, around the area is probably going to head out to the fair. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see all those stands of good stuff, right? Yeah. So do everything in moderation.
Okay.
Even moderation, in moderation.
So even moderation in moderation. So instead of having 4
corn dogs
or 4 bones on those barbecue ribs, or a pork chop on a stick.
Yeah.
Just one.
Just
stick to one.
Yeah.
What about that darn Minnesota Dairy Association shake stand? I usually hit one of those a day.
No, have it. Just go for it. It only comes once a year.
Good thing, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you out at the fair.
All right, sounds good.
You have a great week.
All right, thanks.